Okay, next chapter is chapter 12, opposition. This is a further description of that. Everything is dual. Everything has an opposing point. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes bond. All truths are but partial truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. Summum. The great fourth summum principle, the principle of opposition, embodies the ideal that all manifested things have two sides, two aspects, two opposing points, a pair of opposites with manifold degrees between the two extremes. An understanding of this principle explains the paradoxes which have perplexed the minds of humans. You have always recognized something like this principle and have endeavored to express it by such sayings, maxims, and aphorisms as the following. Everything is and isn't at the same time. Every truth is partially false. All truths are a paradox. There are two sides to every story. There is a reverse side to every coin, etc. The Summum teachings are that the difference between things seemingly diametrically opposed to each other is merely a matter of degree. It teaches that the pairs of opposites may be reconciled, and that thesis and antithesis are identical in nature, only different in degree. The universal reconciliation of opposites is effected by a recognition of this principle of opposition. The Summa individuals claim that illustrations of this principle may be had on every hand, and such illustrations come from an examination of the real nature of anything. They begin by showing that spirit and matter are but two opposing points of the same event, the intermediate fields and levels being merely degrees of vibration. They show that summum and the many are the same, the difference being merely a matter of degree of mental manifestation. Thus, the law and laws are the two opposite points of one phenomena. Likewise, with principle and principles, infinite mind and finite minds. The opposites complement one another, and within all things, or events, exists this complementarity. Combined with the various degrees between them, the opposites serve as a complete description of all events. Passing on to the physical level, they illustrate the principle by showing that hot and cold are identical in nature, the difference being merely a matter of degree. The thermometer shows many degrees of temperature, the lowest point being called cold and the highest hot. Between these two opposing points are many degrees of hot or cold. Call them either and you are equally correct. The higher of 2 degrees is always warmer, while the lower is always colder. There is no place on the thermometer where hot ceases and cold begins. It is all a matter of higher or lower vibrations. The very terms high and low, which you are compelled to use, are but opposing points of the same event. The terms are relative, so it is with east and west. Travel around the world in an eastward direction, and you reach a point which is called west from your starting point. You return from that westward point, travel far enough north, and you find yourself traveling south, or vice versa. So, is it at the mental level? Love and hate are generally regarded as being events diametrically opposed to each other, entirely different, unreconcilable. But as you apply the principle of opposition, you find that there is no such thing as absolute love or absolute hate, as distinguished from each other. The two are merely terms applied to the two opposing points of the same event. Beginning at any point of the scale, you find more love or less hate as you ascend the scale, and more hate or less love as you descend. This is true no matter from what point, high or low, you may start. There are degrees of love and hate, and there is a middle point where like and dislike become so faint that it is difficult to distinguish between them. Courage and fear come under the same rule. The pairs of opposites exist everywhere. Where you find one phenomena, you find its opposite. It is this fact that empowers the enlightened to alter one mental state into another, along the lines of immersion. Things belonging to different classes of events cannot be altered into each other, but things of the same class may be changed, that is, may have their vibration changed. Thus, love never becomes east or west or red or violet, but it may and often does turn into hate. Likewise, hate may be transformed into love by changing its vibration. Courage may be altered into fear and vice versa. Hard things may be rendered soft, dull things become sharp, hot becomes cold. The alteration is always between events of the same kind, but different degree. Take the case of a fearful person. By raising the mental vibrations along the line of fear and courage, that person can be filled with the highest degree of courage and fearlessness. Likewise, the lazy person may change into an active, energetic individual simply by immersion along the line of the desired quality. The student who is unfamiliar with the processes by which the various disciplines of mental science produce changes in the mental state of those around them may not readily understand the principle underlying these changes. But once the principle of opposition is understood, it can be observed that the mental changes are occasioned by a change of position on the scale, a sliding along the same scale. The change is not in the direction of altering one thing into something entirely different, but a change of degree within the same thing or emotion, a vastly important difference. Borrowing an analogy from the physical level, it is impossible to change hot into sharpness or loudness into highness, etc. But hot may readily be altered into cold simply by lowering the vibrations. In the same way, hate and love are mutually alterable. So are fear and courage. Fear cannot be altered into love, nor can courage be changed into hate. The mental states belong to innumerable classes, each class having its opposite points. It is between these opposite points that alteration is possible. The student will readily recognize that in the mental states, as well as the phenomena of physical fields, the two opposing points may be classified as positive and negative, respectively. Therefore, love is positive to hate, courage to fear, activity to non-activity, etc. It will also be noticed that even to those unfamiliar with the principle of vibration, the positive point seems to be of a higher degree than the negative and readily dominates it. The tendency of nature is in the direction of the dominant activity of the positive point. In addition to the changing of the vibration of your own mental states through the operation of the art of immersion, this principle may be extended so as to embrace the phenomena of the influence of one mind over that of another. When it is understood that psychokinetic induction is possible, that is, mental states may be produced by induction from others, then you can readily see how a certain rate of vibration or alteration of a certain mental state may be communicated to another person and their vibrations in that class of mental state thus changed. It is along this principle that the results of many of the mental treatments are obtained. For instance, a person is sad, melancholy, and full of fear. A mental scientist brings their own mind up to the desired vibration by their trained will, and obtaining the desires Obtaining the desired alteration in their own case produces a similar mental state in the other by psychokinetic induction. The result is the vibrations are raised and the person is fixed toward the positive end of the scale instead of toward the negative. Their fear and other negative emotions are altered into courage and similar positive mental states. A little study will show you that these mental changes are nearly all along the lines of immersion. The change is one of degree rather than of kind. A knowledge of the existence of this great Summa principle will enable the student to better understand their own mental states and those of other people. You will see that these states are all matters of degree, and thus you will be able to raise or lower the vibration at will. Being able to change your mental vibration, you become master of your mental states instead of their servant and slave. By your knowledge will you be able to aid your fellow humankind intelligently, and by the appropriate methods change the vibration when the same is desirable. All students are advised to familiarize themselves with the principle of opposition, for a correct understanding of the same will throw light on many difficult subjects. Now, Rhythm, Chapter 13. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its season. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. Summum. The great fifth Summa principle, the principle of rhythm, embodies the idea that in everything there is manifested the copulation of creation. There is an in and out, a measured motion, a to and from movement, an outflow and inflow, a swing forward and backward, a pendulum-like movement, a tide-like ebb and flow between opposing points manifest on the physical, mental, and spiritual levels. The principle of rhythm is closely connected with the principle of opposition described in the preceding chapter. Rhythm manifests between the two opposing points established by the principle of opposition. This does not mean, however, that the pendulum of rhythm swings to the extreme points, for this rarely happens. In fact, it is difficult to establish the extreme opposite point in most cases. The swing is ever toward first one point and then the other. There is always an action and reaction, an advance and retreat, a rising and a sinking of all the affairs and phenomena of the universe. Suns, worlds, humankind, animals, plants, minerals, forces, energy, mind, matter, and even spirit manifest this principle. The principle is active in the creation and destruction of worlds, in the rise and fall of nations, in the life history of all beings, and finally in the mental states of humanity. The copulation of the nothing and possibility, creation's nature, generates rhythm, beginning with the manifestations of spirit of Summum. It will be noticed that there is ever the outpouring and the indrawing, the exhale and inhale of creation's essence. Universes are created, reach their extreme low point of materiality, and then begin their upward swing. Suns spring into being, and once their height of power is reached, the process of retrogression begins. After eons, they become dead masses of matter, awaiting another impulse to bring their inner energies into activity and to initiate a new solar life cycle. The same is true with all the worlds. They are born, grow, and die, only to be reborn. So it is with all things of shape and form. They swing from action to reaction, from birth to death, from activity to inactivity, and then back again. So it is with all living things. They are born, grow, and die, and then are reborn. The same goes for all great movements, religions, philosophies, creeds, fashions, governments, nations, and all else. birth, growth, maturity, decadence, death, and then new birth. The swing of the pendulum is always evident. Night follows day and day night. The pendulum swing from winter and then back again. The atoms, molecules, and all masses of matter swing around the cycle of their nature. There is no such thing as absolute rest or cessation from movement. All movement partakes of rhythm, and the principle is of universal application. It may be applied to any question or phenomena of the many levels of life. It may be applied to all phases of life. It may be applied to all phases of human activity. There is always the rhythmic swing from one point to the other. The universal pendulum is ever in motion. The tides of life flow in and out according to law. The principle of rhythm is well understood by science and is considered a universal law as applied to material things. The Summum students carry the principle much further, knowing that its manifestations and influences extend to the mental activities as well. It accounts for the bewildering succession of moods, feelings, and other annoying and perplexing changes that you notice in yourselves. Students may learn to escape some of its effects through the use of psychokinesis. There are generally two levels so far as mental phenomena are concerned, two general levels of consciousness, the lower and the higher. This understanding enables one to rise to the higher level and thus escape the swing of the rhythmic pendulum which manifests on the lower. In other words, the swing of the pendulum occurs on the subconscious level, and the consciousness is not affected. This is called the law of neutralization. Its operation consists in raising your attention from your lower ego to your higher ego, above the vibrations of the subconscious level of mental activity, so that the negative swing of the pendulum is not manifested in consciousness, thereby escaping its effects. It's like rising above a force and letting it pass beneath you. In the ocean, you can jump above an incoming wave and let its effect pass underneath you. The Summum master or advanced student immerse themselves at the desired point by a process akin to refusing to participate in the backward swing. They raise themselves to a fixed position and allow the mental pendulum to swing back along the subconscious level. All individuals who have attained any degree of self-mastery do this more or less unconsciously. But the masters do this consciously by the use of their will. They attain a degree of poise and mental firmness beyond belief of the masses who are swung backward and forward on the mental pendulum of moods and feelings. The importance of this will be appreciated by any thinking person who realizes what creatures of moods, feelings, and emotions the majority of people are, and how little mastery of themselves they possess. If you will stop and consider a moment, you will realize how much these swings of rhythm have affected you in your life, how a period of high enthusiasm has been invariably followed by an opposite feeling and mood of depression. Likewise, your periods of courage have been succeeded by equal moods of fear. So it has ever been with the majority of people. Tides of feeling have ever risen and fallen with them, but they have never suspected the cause or reason of the mental phenomena. An understanding of the workings of this principle will give you the key to the mastery of these rhythmic swings of feelings. You will come to know yourself better and avoid being carried away by these inflows and outflows. The will is superior to the conscious manifestation of this principle, although the principle itself can never be destroyed. You may escape its effects on one level, but the principle operates nevertheless. The pendulum ever swings, although you may escape being carried along with it. There are other features of the operation of this principle of rhythm which need to be discussed. There comes into its operation that which is known as the law of compensation. One of the definitions or meanings of the word compensate is to counterbalance, which is the sense in which Summum uses the term. In this law of compensation to which it is this law of compensation to which Summum refers when it says the measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. The law of compensation is that the swing in one direction determines the swing to the opposite direction, or to the opposing point. The one balances or counterbalances the other. On the physical level, you see many examples of the law. The pendulum of the clock swings a certain distance to the right and then an equal distance to the left. The seasons balance each other in the same way. The tides follow the same law. The same law is manifested in all the phenomena of rhythm. The pendulum with a short swing in one direction has but a short swing in the other, while the long swing to the left invariably means the long swing to the right. The law is constant on the physical level and has reference in the natural laws of physics. Summa teaches that mental states are subject to the same law. The person who enjoys keenly is subject to keen suffering, while those who feel little pain are capable of feeling but little joy. There are temperaments which permit little enjoyment and equally little suffering, while there are others which permit the most intense enjoyment but also the most intense suffering. The rule is that the capacity for pain and pleasure in each individual is balanced. The law of compensation is in full operation here. In consideration of the rhythmic swings between pleasure and pain, Summum teaches that to the degree that one experiences the emotion of pleasure or pain, they will swing as far proportionately toward the opposite point of feeling. However, in the case where the pendulum has begun its swing toward pain, by utilizing the law of neutralization as previously described, one can escape the pain by rising above the effects of the pendulum as it swings toward the point of feeling. According to the law of compensation, you are balancing a degree of pleasure and pain previously experienced, either in a present life or in a previous incarnation. This throws a new light on the problem of pain. Summa regards the chain of lives as continuous and as forming a part of the overall life cycle of the individual. In consequence, the rhythmic swing, when understood in this way, would be without meaning unless the fact of reincarnation is admitted. Consider for a moment that energy is neither created nor destroyed, and so it is with the life force energizing the soul. Summa claims that the master or advanced student is able to a great degree to escape the swing toward pain by the process of neutralization before mentioned. By rising on the higher level of the ego, much of the experience that comes to those residing on the lower level of consciousness is avoided. The law of compensation plays an important part in the lives of humankind. It will be noticed that one generally pays the price of anything they possess or lack. If they have one thing, they lack another. The balance is struck. No one can have their cake and eat it too. Every situation has its pleasant and unpleasant sides. The things that one gains are always paid for by the things that one loses. The rich possess much that the poor lack, while the poor often possess things that are beyond the reach of the rich. The millionaire may have the inclination toward exquisite dining, but lacks the appetite to enjoy it. He envies the appetite and digestion of the laborer who lacks the wealth and inclinations of the millionaire, but who receives more pleasure from his plain food. Through life, the law of compensation is ever in operation, striving to balance and counterbalance, and always succeeding in time, even though several lifetimes may be required for the return swing of the pendulum of rhythm. Okay, I'm at, let's see, 25 minutes. That won't give me time to read this chapter 14, which is cause and effect. But that will be in the very next of the series. And this is the Dove Lady, and I hope to hear comments from some of you who are following this. I really love comments, so please don't hesitate. Love you all. Bye-bye.